Alright, I guess we'll pick this up. Howdy everybody, my name is Gata, and welcome to whatever the heck this is. I'm just making sure that everything is working properly. Can you hear me? Ooh, that music should not have started. I did not have autoplay on. Stop that. Go away. Anyway. So yes, hello everyone. Normally we bake on Saturday evenings, but we kind of had to do an order earlier in the week, so I had an open day today. And I asked everyone in the subscriber and donator section of my Discord group what we wanted to do today, and I gave them a couple of options. And no one wanted me to play Monster Hunter except for Fa, which is kind of upsetting because I know that Fa's a big fan of Monster Hunter, but everyone else said, no, this one's cooler, and so sorry, Fa, maybe at some point in the future. What we are doing today is we are going to be doing a working session on the tabletop game / setting that I've been working on for a short while, and just kind of using you guys as my rubber duck, I guess. I'm going to be typing a lot and thinking a lot and talking out loud, and if you guys have questions about it, like, we can discuss that while working on it, and maybe it'll lead me to making a better product. No, you want to hear me geek out. All right, well, I mean, that's exactly what you're going to get. That's exactly what you are going to get today. I don't have any music planned. I didn't want to use my spooky music. It doesn't fit the theme. And I didn't really want to use my farming music because it also doesn't fit the theme. Where does the name Halcyon come from? Well, let me look at this high-tech mic. Yeah, it's been a while, Taylor. It's been a while. I have an arm for it. I have one of these compressor things. But yeah, wow, Taylor's in chat. Amazing. I haven't seen you in ages. How's the boyfriend? How's Gary? I'm happy to see you. All right. I'm going to lower this so it's not right in front of my face. And we're going to switch over here. I have to do some fiddling around to make sure that looks right. This feels like I leave for 20 seconds and the stream quality shoots forward. I'm glad you think so. All right. So, real quick, I have a significantly smaller screen to work with, so I can't tell if what's here is legible to you guys. I want you guys to be able to read along as I work. If this is too small, I can try and, enhance, zoom in. But if not, then I'll just leave it as it is. So, the game system that I'm working on is called Cry for Halcyon. And it is, as you can see here, a Mega Man Zero / ZX / Legends inspired TTRPG rule set and setting written by My Name is Gata. It is small. Actually, hold on. Can I just zoom in like this? Here we go. Then can I center it like so? Well, if I do that, I mean, I can read what's here, but then I am unable to see my my stuff on the side. So maybe if I put it down to only 150? Did that do anything? Back to 100. Is that a bit more legible? I want to be able to still see on my end. I want to still be able to see the little tags over here, so I can hop from section to section. So chat is currently covering it, but I do have a bunch of tabs for all the individual sections that I've written so far. Some of them are only like a paragraph, maybe a couple of lines on some of them, but I wanted to get them down in some sort of order. From the last time I did a brainstorming session. The ones that have little asterisks in front of them are sections that I marked as being like, hey, you really got to work on these at some point in the future. So we'll probably be hopping from chapter to chapter that has those on it. And we can put you back into the center where you're supposed to go. Center on screen. There we go. There we go. Okay, so yes, so as the description explains, it is a Mega Man Zero / ZX / Legends inspired tabletop role-playing game. You don't need to know what those are. Like, you don't need to know what those are. I'm going to give it a brief explanation of why I chose those as the inspiration. So, the Mega Man Zero / ZX series is a sequel series to the Mega Man X series, which was a sequel to the original Mega Man series. Mega Man took place within the near future. Mega Man X took place 100 years after that, and the Mega Man Zero and ZX series take an undetermined, potentially 100 to 500 years after that. In that time, robotics have advanced to a point where there are advanced enough robots that their personhood comes under question, and humans and the advanced robots called Reploids end up having to fight for dominance or resources. There's a whole bunch of like specific plot reasons why they're constantly at war with each other, or, you know, within each other's camps. But basically it's the excuse to have a Mega Man game where you run around shooting robots and saving the world. But the timeline of Mega Man ends with the game Mega Man Legends, where, plot twist, it is revealed that humanity advanced far enough that they eradicated sickness, they eradicated illness, they eradicated death, and they left the planets to live amongst the stars because they had advanced in this super advanced society. But what they left behind were a bunch of, basically, they made robots in their image. They made a robot so advanced that it replicated the human system where they could live, eat, breathe, reproduce, and die, never knowing they were just a bunch of advanced robots. And then the cycle begins anew, because no matter what happens, something bad goes on, and there needs to be a Mega Man to save it. The main thing that I wanted to take from those games was the aesthetic, the concept of having an advanced humanoid body, of being a robot, but not being like a robot, you know? Like having the ability of being able to modify your body to add weapons, to increase your skills, to is a transhumanist thing, to advance beyond human limits. But also, it's a post-apocalyptic game, where the setting you are playing in takes place after some sort of precursor society has been destroyed. Modern humanity doesn't know that it's not the same as what they think humanity has always been. They are unaware that they have become an advanced species beyond humankind. They don't know the difference. They just assume that all humans have always been able to, like, remove a hand and replace it with a sword, and that's just how they've been. That's just how it's been. So it's Mega Man Zero inspired, Mega Man ZX inspired by proxy. The one premise of Mega Man Legends, the dungeon diving and resource collecting bit, is what really got my gears turning. But also, I probably should include on this, it has evolved to be inspired by Monster Hunter. And this is funny for me because I actually never played Monster Hunter until earlier today. I only have known of Monster Hunter as a thing that other people like, and I've looked into it enough to understand the gist of the game, enough to be like, oh, that's kind of interesting, but I never actually started playing it until today. So the actual information I have, the research I have on that particular inspiration is still kind of iffy, but I'm working on it. So for those of you who were here, not last Saturday, but the Saturday before that, I did a just chatting stream where I ended up basically just blabbing about this project without meaning to. I spent the majority of that stream just continually talking about the ideas that I had for it. Well, since then, I've sat down and I've actually put things to paper, or in this case, Google Doc, I guess. Hello, Koi. I hate to break it to you. You may have missed me just saying this, but I actually only know of Monster Hunter as an aesthetic. I get the gist of the games. I haven't played one until just today. Like, literally just today. Last night, I got in the mail my copy of the Switch version of Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate, and I have pre-ordered Monster Hunter Rise, which will be coming in March. So I don't actually have a lot of experience with it. But the basic idea, as far as I'm aware, is that there are a bunch of monsters, like dinosaurs and shit, and you go out and you kill them, and you take the resources from them, and use those resources to craft new weapons, new armor, and tools and whatnot, to then go out and kill and harvest from larger, bigger monsters. And that's the aspect that I wanted to include in this game. We'll get to that in a second. What do I want to talk about first? Because I do want to give you guys a quick overview before we get going. Probably not maybe some of the setting. So if you can read this here, actually, I probably should mention, if you are a member of my Henhouse Discord group, if you are a subscriber on Twitch or you have donated at $5 or more, you already have a link to this very document that I'm working from. So if you wanted, you could go to those links, pull it up on your own screen, and read it at your own pace if you feel the need. Just throwing that out there. You guys always have access to this if you're a subscriber. So it is a post-apocalyptic. Society has reached a point, the Earth has reached a point where, or fantasy planet, it's not really the planet Earth, it's a fantasy world. There was a cataclysm which wiped a super advanced human society off the map. And when the setting of the game picks up so far into the future from that point that what that society was and what they could do has been completely forgotten. However, society hasn't built itself back up to like a modern day technological level because one of the after effects of that cataclysm was basically the entire planet got magic nuked. There was this giant magic MacGuffin, which they were all fighting over, and what it would do was that there were these godlike figures who would use it to cause a mortal creature to ascend to their plane of existence. It would bestow godhood upon a mortal creature who was chosen to ascend. And there was a big war about that. The other mortals didn't like that they had someone over their heads controlling everything. Some of the other gods did like a very Satan-esque rebellion where they try to take control of the power of godhood, and then they got shoved down and sent to fantasy hell. We'll get to that later. But anyway, the end result was that the god MacGuffin, the magic MacGuffin, was shattered, and bits of it rained down onto the planet below. The gods gave everyone a big middle finger, and they fucked off, so there's no gods at the moment. And the latent energy of those pieces of the MacGuffin slowly but surely evolved the mortal populace into these advanced robotic forms they have now. Now, I say gods, but basically the one mechanic in this setting that I refuse to explain beyond this one statement is that robots are the end result of every evolutionary path. You know how like evolution has made 5 different kinds of crab? There was a large crash just outside my office, so Brisket's gotten into something. I'll be right back. Okay, sorry about that. I'm gonna leave this music on for a second. I like it. God. Yeah, Brisket knocked over and broke a vase. It's fine. No, it didn't shatter, it just splintered, so I tossed it out. Anyway, what was I saying? Yeah, So basically, all of their gods were in my mind's eye, I'm imagining big, square, blocky, like Generation 1 Transformers. They won't be like actual Optimus Prime, but for the time being, until I get some actual artwork down, in your head, imagine various palette-swapped versions of just G1 Optimus Prime, and that's the pantheon of gods, okay? So the Magic MacGuffin shatters, and instead of having all of its power concentrated on one individual to turn them into a Gen 1 Transformer, it ends up littering the planets where the latent energy slowly, over like 1,000 or so years, morphs all organic life forms into what is essentially robots. Now, this is really only an excuse to include Monster Hunter elements and like body modification, transhumanism stuff without having to actually involve like body gore. Like, some people will still be a little iffy about that, and there's gonna be warnings when the final book does come out. But to me, making it like everyone's a robot, so instead of blood it's oil, and instead of flesh it's like, you know, chips and shit, I feel like that, like, you know, makes it a bit better, I guess. Maybe that's just me though. I can't tell. Does MTG stand for Metal the Gear or Magic the Gathering? It's probably Magic the Gathering now that I think about it. Okay. Let me think. What else was I going to say? I've never had to actually, like, pitch this idea to someone when I, like, have stuff in front of me, so I'm torn between just reading the document word for word and talking off the cuff. And I haven't actually done any game dev yet, so, yeah. Let's talk about the actual math of this real quick. So, the system itself is going to be run on a 3d6 scaling system. What that means is that whenever you attempt to do anything important, if you pick up an apple, you're not going to roll to see if you pick up the apple. But if it's going to be like something important, most of you have played tabletop role-playing games, you know what I mean. There's a differentiation between just doing random stuff and doing things that could move the game forward. You will roll 3d6s, 3 of those little square fellows. And then there is a chart here. Depending on what you roll will determine what your result is. And the DM will narrate that result. But you can alter the result of your roll with bonuses, which I'm going to jump to down here. Let's see here. You know stuff and get +1 to your roll for it. If you can argue that your specific bonus applies to the roll, you can add it. Your DM might require you to defend your choices, of course, and you should always play fairly, and there's some level up systems. So, the game is going to have a knowledge-based system, where instead of saying, oh, my stats are, I have this in strength, and this in intelligence, instead you are going to have a literal list of things that you mechanically know and get bonuses for. So, for example, if your character specifically goes out of their way to get better with swordplay, they would have a bonus to any action that involves the use of a sword. If your character is someone who has researched explosives and has a bonus in an explosive category, they can get a +1 or so to any roll that involves their knowledge of explosives. And these can stack. So, I'm trying to figure out a best way to describe this. So in my mind's eye, you're going to have a large sheet with just like lists of all of the knowledges that you have, and then a little number next to it that tells you how much of a bonus you get for using that knowledge, and those things stack. Also, there is... I did much better explaining this last time. How do I word this? So, you have the bonuses that you get from having various knowledges. You also will get access to bonuses based on modifications you make to your own body. based to chips you install in different parts of your body, or, you know, like weapons and stuff that you have attached to your body. If you replace you like the 666 bit? Yeah. If you somehow manage to get the devil's number 666 on any given roll, you may choose one of the bonuses on that roll and learn a new skill related to it and the action you're doing. This is literally 1 in a 216 chance of ever happening, so take it, you earned it. I got that off of a game called Roll for Shoes. And Roll for Shoes it's an interesting game. You start off with only one stat, and the stat is called Do Anything, and you only have 1d6 applied to it. So you can literally say, I do this, and that counts as your Do Anything stat. If you ever roll a 6 on a certain activity, you gain that activity as a new stat, and you get an additional d6. So, for example, if I rolled for shoes, jokingly, I rolled to see if I have shoes, and I got a 6, I have a new stat that's called, like, shoes, and it's 2d6. If I'm ever rolling shoes, and both of those d6s comes up as 6s, I get another stat with 3d6, right? And I'm assuming that the game is meant to be run, whereas you get a longer list of 2d6 stats based off your Do Anything roll, and then maybe 1 or 2 3d6 stats. I like that concept of rolling well enough that you get a mechanical bonus to your character, not just for that roll, but like from that point forward, so I decided to add something in similar. Getting 3 6s is ridiculous, though. If that ever happens, then yeah, hell yeah, you get it. What if you get all 1s? If you get all 1s, that means you are in the 3 to 6 terrible failure category. At which point something catastrophic happens, and your DM is responsible for that. There already is like a natural 1 fail state included into this system. This 3d6 roll is I got the specific numbers from a game called Imps, which you can buy on itch.io. It's public. It's not public domain, but it's Creative Commons 4, so I can just take whatever I want and slap it in and call it a day. But a lot of Powered by the Apocalypse games that I have played and read have used a 2d6 system, which is nothing wrong with that, but I really liked the way the bell curve for 3d6 looks. You'll notice that there are 2 failure states and then 3 success states, meaning that this is going to be a game where success or like moving forward happens more often than hard no's. And even with a terrible failure, it isn't a hard no, it's a no, but also, and then you clench your butt cheeks and pray. This may change in the future. I haven't playtested any of this. If it ends up being too easy, and it'll kind of ruin the, whoever Anonymous Mink is, you sure do like this terrible failure. Yeah, if it ends up too easy, it'll kind of ruin the aesthetic of being a post-apocalyptic fight for survival, but I don't want to make it too difficult right off the bat because it's meant to be fun. With the bonuses, let's see. There's some bit here about leveling up your bonuses. So the plan is that there are going to be 2 kinds of skills, is what I'm calling them. The overarching skills, which reflect a basic knowledge of the subject, and the tag skills. So I'm still working on separating this. So the official page will have a chart of specific like headers, right? And let's choose one for random. Let's say one of the headers is combat, and you can only put 1 pip into that, right? So you say, okay, my character is going to study combat, and depending on how well they roll, they succeed and they get a pip, which means from that point forward, they can get a +1 bonus to any action they take that involves combat, okay? But combat is super broad, and while you can get that +1, it's only a +1. Once you have the combat, which is like the header, the overarching skill, then you can start getting into the nitty-gritty. So combat, let's say you want to then learn specifically about swords. You specifically want to use a character that has like a beam saber or something. You would then spend your time and effort into acquiring the materials to get your character a sword and learn how to use it. So they would then have a tag skill that is swords, and they'd start off with 1 pip. But the more they train with that skill, they can upgrade that to 3 pips, and that relates to additional bonus. So once they have maxed out their sword skill, if they ever attack someone with a sword, they get +4 to that roll. I'm thinking there's going to be some kind of cap, maybe, but this is still my first draft. I'm still just throwing things at a wall and seeing what sticks. Let me think what else. So these skills here, these bonuses, are specifically for learning things like training, studying, researching. This is the part of the game that requires downtime investing by the player in order to get these things updated. I'm still unsure if there is going to be a stereotypical level up system where you can say my character is like a level 5 robot, so he can have up to this many skills available. I'm still not sure if I want to use a stereotypical level up system for that, or if I want to leave it more freeform and simply be more of a time thing, where obviously nothing is stopping you from spending all of your in-game time upgrading your pips, except for the fact that the game involves giant robots and going out to get resources to continue surviving. So, like, that, you have to balance studying and actually going out and helping your society thrive. On the other hand, there's the body slot and element chip section, which you can see has... Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I hope you're finding this interesting at all. Because even though I did it for 2 hours a couple weeks ago, I feel like I'm doing a very bad job of explaining how this game is supposed to work. So the knowledge, the skills system up here is meant to be the long-term investment part of the game. The short term involves the dungeon delving, the monster hunting, and the resource gathering, which you can use to get body slots and element chips. So as mentioned, you are all Reploids, you are robots, you're robots, you are super advanced humanoid robots. And you have the ability, the only thing stopping you is knowledge and resources, to upgrade your body to be pretty much anything you want. And we'll get to, there's a crafting system involved in this, we'll get to that later on. At the moment, there are currently 4 primary sections of where you can install chips. And chips are meant to be things that you find in the precursor dungeons. They're not meant to be something that you can craft yourself because the technology of your society isn't at that level yet. So dungeon delving into the precursor ruins, finding resources, finding these old relics, this old technology, and then using it to upgrade your body to be stronger is one of the main pulls. It's dangerous down there, but you gotta go do it if you really want to get the cool stuff, which includes like elemental abilities, laser swords, that sort of thing. And the system that I'm using, let's see, bonuses, body slots, and elements. Okay, so this is the right section for that. As opposed to having a book filled with like 100 different, 100 different body mod options for the DM to dole out, right? I've decided to instead make all of the collectibles a little more generic, and then depending on where you install them in your body changes what they do. So instead of having a head chip of seeing, you will have a chip, just a chip, and it depending on where you plug it in, if you want to use that chip to better your eyesight, you'd plug it into your head. So like it says here, head slots, primarily sensory, sight, hearing, perception. Body slots, hardiness and energy storage. Resistance to kinds of damages, as well as upgrades that increase health points or energy. Arm slots are for offensive upgrades, and leg slots are for mobility and movement. I considered having a right arm, left leg situation, but that ended up like, no, I don't need them mechanically. If you want to have it so only one of your legs has like, I don't know, a fire kick to it, or maybe one arm is a sword and one arm is a shield, like, you can do that with flavor. It doesn't have to have a mechanic specific, like, specifying which arm is which kind of thing. I am not a fan of D&D-esque wargamey combat. It has its place. I've played it. I have enjoyed the games that I was in, but it's not the experience I'm trying to create for my game right now. So there's that. Let's see here. Let's see. I made a note to myself about extra limbs. If you want to tailor wings, I haven't figured out how to include that, but that'll be an option. Weapon upgrades was something I was considering, but now I'm thinking of... We'll get to weapons in a second, but I was thinking of having the weapons so you can upgrade them, so you could have, like, if your body has, like, an electric fist, but you want to use a fire sword, the sword would have its own upgrade system, but I'm thinking it's too much. It's probably too much. Let's see. And here I just threw basic concepts down for what these chips could be. This is probably going to change. 2 kinds of chips, elements and enhancements. Element chips channel the power of an element, like fire, electric, or ice, and affect every action done with the body part it's installed in. I'm not sure how I want to handle that. If I want to keep that. I was just throwing things at a wall here. Enhancement chips allow an action to be enhanced or altered in a specific way, but must be activated for the action. I mentioned, I wrote earlier in this document the concept of there being an energy. I considered having an energy like meter as kind of like a MP, a magic point system, where there were going to be actions you could just do, but then certain powerful things you attempted to try using your body mods would require spending an internal energy source. So if you happen to get a fire chip and you install it, like, in your hand, you can't spend the whole session doing nothing but flamethrowering at everything in your path. Like, I wanted to have some sort of limit to it. But I haven't thought much further beyond thinking that there probably should be some kind of limit. We'll see. So, I just threw out some element ideas: fire, water, thunder, wind, magnet, shadow, gravity, explosion. These I actually got from Mega Man Battle Network. I've been doing a lot of research into the Mega Man series and spin-offs for inspiration for this. So this is just me throwing spaghetti at the wall. And then effect chips, so absorb impact, extend effect, light, reflect, rolling. The general idea is that frog. I meant to change that word to something else, but it's currently just frog. I'll leave it. The idea was that if you had one element chip in a certain body point, you could then modify that element with whatever effect chips you had. So let's say you had a fire chip installed in your legs, which allowed you to fire skate, maybe. And then you also included a quick effect chip into that leg as well. You could either just use the fire chip, or you could use a fire chip with the quick chip to give yourself a super fast dash or something. I don't know. It's meant to be ridiculously customizable and also entirely up to DM fiat. I want to promote the players being creative, so that it's less actual bookkeeping for me and the DM. One of the things that a lot of games that include massive customization or crafting systems have to deal with is the fact that if the game wants to keep a specific balance, they end up having to write out rules for every itty-bitty, nitty-gritty concept, because otherwise someone will find a way to break it. They'll still find a way to break it. That's how games work. But somebody will find a way to break it and still be following the spirit of the rules and completely ruin their games. I'm sure you guys have played in some games where someone found some tiny specific rule, or a DM forgot a rule and allowed for someone to just run roughshod over the entire adventure or the entire system. I'm less afraid of that, because that's not my problem. If it happens in my game, I, as the DM, will say, no, that's ridiculous. I'm not going to let you do that. Here's an alternative. If it happens in somebody else's game and their DM can't take control of that, that's their problem, not mine. So I want this game to have a ridiculous amount of creativity to it, and the least amount of bookkeeping as possible. The least amount of bookkeeping as possible. So that's the basics of it. That's the basic. I have more tabs, but in terms of how the game is played, you're a robot. You go looking for shit. You find the shit. and plug it into your body and then make up what that stuff does based on the parameters of what you're given. And there you go. That's the game. We've done it, everyone. We've absolutely done it. However, there's more to it that I wanted, specifically because I know what kind of game experience I like. So I wanted to try and recreate that. Which means we have a resources and crafting system. Let's see here. Outputs. Outputs is my pseudo magic system. I'm not going to bother talking about this right now. I'm going to come back to it at some point. Resources. Okay. So this is the bit where I have like one paragraph and an asterisk. Because this is the bit that's kind of iffy. In my mind's eye, the game is meant to take place in a world where there are a bunch of small protected communities of these humanoids. Is frog the same as FF frog? No, the names for the body slot, the effect chips, came from a list of upgrades you could get in the Mega Man Zero series. And at that point, I just copied and pasted the whole list and then slightly altered the wording to make more sense in this context. Because a lot of Mega Man Zero's upgrading in their system was with a Cyber Elf system, which I'm not going to get into that. It was kind of like a small handheld Tamagotchi side thing where you would give them resources and, oh, sad face, I'm sorry. But no, it's not the same place. It's not the same thing. But yeah, so it wasn't quite a one-to-one Mega Man Zero's upgrade system to my upgrade system. Oh, why are you? Nah, I'll leave it be. I'm going to ignore outputs for now. So resources. The idea is that society has not advanced much past the hunter-gatherer stage, despite it being like 1,000 years, specifically because, right? There's a bunch of Megazords stomping around. So the god MacGuffin, the magic MacGuffin that shattered into a bunch of crystalline shards and rained down over the planet and output this low hum of magic energy and slowly altered the evolution of all organic creatures into robotic ones, resulted in basically dinosaurs still being around. So you have a bunch of low-level monsters, low-level creatures that is like robot wolves, robot leopards, things that you could probably beat off with a heavy enough stick. But then there's also super big actual like Power Rangers Zords stomping around, living and breathing. It's like living on Monster Planet like Godzilla, right? So humanity, or whatever it is now, is limited by the fact that the planet, is still home to all of these giant monsters. And this is where the Monster Hunter thing comes into play. So, like, the societies are not completely helpless. They have a bunch of people whose entire life's point is to go out and hunt these monsters, bring back their bits, and use them to upgrade themselves and their villages. But it's still an issue. You can't make your location too big, or someone, be it a rival village or one of those giant monsters, is going to come notice, stomp on through, and destroy everything. So with that, I wanted there to be a crafting system. But like I mentioned earlier, games that include massive amounts of customization have to write out every possible option you have, or it's unbalanced, but I didn't want that. So I spent a lot of time researching a lot of different games and how they handled crafting in their games. And almost every single one that I found, there weren't a lot, but the ones that I found, their crafting systems was basically a complete separate book where they wrote out everything you would want to know about everything you could potentially harvest. There was specific rules for harvesting specific resources. There was information on like how much the item was worth, how heavy it was, what its properties were. There was a Legend of Zelda game No, that was something else. There was one game that I saw, I forget the name of it now, but they actually included like crafting recipes. So if you wanted to craft your own potions, you would have to go out and get this specific herb and combine it with this specific liquid, but only if you had a glass bottle. And I'm looking at this, and I am sure there are people out there who love that amount of crunch, who love that amount of detail. But that goes against the design ethics that I'm working with for my system here. I need something simple and easier. So what I ended up coming up with is the crafting system we see here. Let's see. Combining multiple crafting materials together creates something new. Simple enough. When attempting to craft something, determine how many different materials you are going to craft with and roll 2d6? Why did I say 2d6? 2d6 minus x plus bonuses. I think it's supposed to be 3d6. I don't know why I said 2 there. I've typed something. We're 45 minutes in and I typed something, guys. I'm a game developer. With x being the number of the resources used. On a success or higher, you manage to craft an object that more or less does what you wanted it to. On a great or grand success, however, you may add one or more of the tags related to the materials used in the recipe, enhancing your creation. So instead of having a huge book with everything you could possibly ever make, I am giving both the DM and the players the chance to invent resources and then use a tag system. Estelle says they're eating fried chicken. I'm happy for you and your fried chicken. So the example that I have been using when explaining this to people is that, say, you find a flower that's pollen, when inhaled, has a sedative effect. It makes you sleepy. So this flower, whatever it's called, the sleep flower, sure. You find a sleep flower, and that flower has the tag sleepy on it because it makes you sleepy. So its tag is sleepy. And somebody who collects enough of this looks at it as like, I bet I could make some kind of sleep bomb. I could make something that allows me to condense this effect into a dispensable object that we can use to fight monsters. So the character then goes through the process of, crafting, as listed here. They craft the item, and if they roll high enough, they can then take a tag from one of the things that they're using to create it. So let's say they wanted a sleep powder bomb that would explode into a cloud of sleep powder to affect multiple targets. All right, let's say they say, hey DM, can I make a sleep powder bomb that will have like an area of effect? Whoever smells it falls asleep. The DM will say, okay, well, if you want it to be a poof bomb, you have to combine that flower with something to make it go poof. You have the sleepy, now make the poof. So let's say they have gunpowder. Why not? So they craft sleepy flower with gunpowder, bum, 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 bum. If they only get a success, then they'll have a device that will out some sleepy powder, but it won't be like the big boof they wanted, right? It'll do what they want, but not really. However, if they rolled high enough, they could add one of the two tags. So gunpowder's tag would be explosive. Sleepy flower's tag would be sleepy. So if they roll high enough, they could add both those tags onto the new item. It'll be the sleepy explosive sleep bomb, and they throw it out, and it'll go a big boosh. That's the example that I've been using. It's mostly a tool for being creative. You take the resource the DM puts in front of you, ask, can I make this out of this? And the DM explains, well, you gotta roll this and that, and if so, then yes, you can. And from that point forward, your character knows how to make that thing that they made, and they can make it in, excess to have forever. That recipe is now something your character knows, and they can just craft. No more rolls are required. I have considered, though, saying all this, I have considered that if I end up releasing this as like a full-fledged game, I would then make a separate document with a number of setting-specific resources. Nothing too big, nothing majorly detailed, but enough to give people like a reference point for, okay, my player wants to find a metal that'll do this, that, and the other, I can make one up, or I can flip through this book and say, oh, this is close enough, and then throw that at them. Nothing that requires that much bookkeeping. Just a name, a short description, and 1 or 2 tags that describe what the item can be used for in crafting, and there you go. Bam. You're done. You're done. You're done. Similar to crafting, I wanted to have a study system where when you have enough resources, you can choose to study that resource as opposed to upgrading like a skill, and you will receive a new tag skill if you roll high enough that relates to the thing that you researched. So, for example, if instead of crafting with the sleepy flower, the character wanted to study it, they would spend enough time and resources to study that, and if they do well enough, they will gain a pip of a bonus to anything pertaining to their knowledge of the sleepy tag. So if they find, for example, they are attacked by a monster that expels a breath, they can say, hey, I know a little bit about, like, sedative stuff. Could I, like, do a roll to see if I know enough to determine if that's going to put us to sleep? And the DM could say, yeah, sure, go ahead, because you have knowledge of this topic, you have a sleepy tag pip, you can add that to your roll. And then, depending on how well they roll, the results don't matter. That's the point, though, right? So spending time crafting and researching and collecting resources makes your character more knowledgeable. It allows them the chances to experiment more with crafting for more tools you can use while you're out in the field, and character progression works up that way. Let's see what else we have. The last thing we have on this document is weapons, and I really do not have a good, strong idea of how to handle weapons. As you can see, the first line is, you can hit stuff in this, I guess. Weapons deal different types of damage depending on what they're built to do. This is just me throwing ideas down. So study first, then craft sleep bombs. Got it. I have been considering that studying requires you to spend that resource, similar to how you would have to spend it to craft something. So they're basically the same system, only the result is you either have a thing or you have more knowledge. So like the math would be exactly the same. It's just the end result is different, and as a result, I have them on 2 different sections. Okay. I think it took me an hour to do it, but I think that that is everything. What do I want to actually work on, though? Oh, here's another thing I didn't mention. I skipped over this. This entire section, this is the moves section, and this is heavily inspired by Powered by the Apocalypse games, if you've ever played those. And my first thought was, oh, I haven't included combat in this at all, have I? Oh, shit. I guess I'm writing the combat section then. Alright. Alright. I'm going to put an asterisk here, simply because I know I'm going to need more work for it. Let's see. Combat, in all caps. Combat! Alright, and now it's actually listed. You can't see it because my camera's in the way, but it's listed on the sidebar there. Alright, and then we turn off this and we lower you. Okay. Combat is when you fight stuff. Shocker. Alright, so this game uses what I call the skirmish system. Whenever combat is required, let's see. Determine which character is aggroed by which enemies. How do I word this? Separate them into bubbles, i.e., I'll reword this later. I'm just slapping it down. Bubble A, bubble B, etc. Players move first taking an action, then enemies. Now hold on. Players will be taking an action in whichever order they desire. Enemies move next, but in this system, the DM never rolls. So the reason why I thought about this is because looking at the moves, there is active attack spheres. Attack spheres! I like that. I like that idea. I'm not going to reword the entire sentence right now. We'll do that on second pass. There are active actions and reactive actions. There's a difference between using your sword to stab at someone and using your sword to parry an attack when they come back at you. Enemies move next. Remember, the DM never rolls. So instead of the player rolls to see how if they hit, and then the DM rolls to see if the enemy hits, the player rolls to see if they hit, and then the player rolls again to see if they can dodge. But there's obviously a ridiculous amount of options. It's you do something, and then you do something as a reaction to an action that they do against you. Does that make sense? I said the same word over and over again, action. But yeah. So basically, it's constantly in the player's, like, the ball is always in the player's field. The DM explains what the monster is going to do, what the enemy is going to do. And if the player can't get out of the way or stop them in time before they complete their action, that's on the player. It's very much player-focused. The DM never rolls. Continue to resolve actions bubble by bubble. Players may move between bubbles with a move action. That's not what it's actually called. I'm just throwing this down. But any enemy actively aggroed to them will follow. So if you wanted to leave your bubble A and join bubble B to be with your friends, you can do that, but if you do that before you kill all the enemies that are actively on you, they'll follow you and join the other enemies in the big bubble B. Let's see. Hero to them will follow. Yeah, that's pretty much combat. Then you just keep going until someone is dead. Bazinga. Okay. Yeah, that's combat. Alright, let's move back up to moves. There probably should be a section specifically on harvesting, too. Because again, the idea is you go into these dungeons, you go out into the wild, you fight enemy robots and animals and whatnot to acquire resources from them and bring them back home. Should there be a role for harvesting? Well, actually, you know what? How to play. We already have the perfect resolution system right here. Maybe I'll need a section that specifies success means you get something. Great success means you get exactly what resource you were looking for from this thing. And a grand success, yeah, let's do that. Where should we put that? Resources, let's do it under resources. Let's do harvesting. And boop. If you were not aware, game dev, in my experience, is mostly typing a thing. It makes you think of another thing, and then you hop elsewhere in the document to type that thing up before you forget, and it just continues on and on. I didn't start from the title and write straight to the end. Oh no, I've been hopping back and forth the entire time. So harvesting, roll 3d6 like usual, you bastard. I'm also very rude to myself. Like, swearing at myself and calling myself mean names is the only way I get through this. Let's see here. On a success, you get something. DM decides. On a great success, you get the thing you declared you're looking for. On a grand success, you get the thing and also something else DM decides. So the idea is that, let's say you're attacking a giant robot T-Rex, right? And you kill it, and it falls over, and you say to your DM, okay, well, we came out here for some kind of hydraulic part that allows it to hop like a kangaroo. I just made that off the top of my head. Let's say the Tyrannosaurus Rex attacks by jumping up into the air and slamming its body down. And you went after it because you needed some sort of hydraulic motor that you know is in its legs. You need that for a thing, all right? So you kill the dinosaur, you kill the T-Rex, and you say, okay, I am specifically going to attempt to harvest this thing for its hydraulic presses in its legs. And then whoever you decide is the carving person will roll, and then if they roll high enough, they'll get exactly what they wanted. You'll get the press, okay? But on a regular success, maybe I'll have like a proto-dictionary, like a bestiary of sorts, not for every potential thing you can find in the game, but like something like some sort of like loot list that a DM could feasibly roll on if they need inspiration to determine what you get that isn't necessarily what you wanted. That's neither here nor there. That's in the future. But if I do that, if I have a chance of failure to be included in the harvesting process, would that prevent players from seeking out foes? If your options are to go dungeon delving and hope you find something similar among all of the old shit, or going out into the forest and fighting a T-Rex, would there ever become a point where one is less or more risky than the other? Probably. Most definitely. Unless the DM does some kind of fiat fuckery and puts a T-Rex in the dungeon. That's entirely possible. Do I, as the writer, need to include verbiage that specifically states, This is what I was talking about earlier, where some games, when they have a ridiculous amount of customization, they'll have to write down like itty-nitty rules. I have to determine if I care if players... When I was playing Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, it was in a game where it was a frozen survival game. I was sold on it being Breath of the Wild, but colder. And the DM included the concept that we needed to eat at regular intervals and drink clean water or run the risk of becoming diseased. We never became diseased because every time we stopped for a rest, every player frantically said, we eat our rations and also boil water from the snow. And the DM thought they had us on that because there was all the snow around. But if we're just shoving snow in our mouths, that still runs the risk of us getting sick from something. But we figured out, literally session 1, that we had the means to boil our drinking water. So from that point forward, we just had to remember to boil more water to fill up our flasks. We ended up completely diverting around the mechanic that the DM had put in the game to make things more difficult. We found a workaround, and it kind of ruined that experience. It stopped being an actual concern. Should we go down there into that dungeon if we're not going to have access to clean drinking water? It became more of a gotcha, like a sort of Damocles over our heads, where the DM was just waiting for the day that one of us forgot to drink properly so they could slam the repercussions down on top of us. And that wasn't fun. So my question here for me is, do I include, if I included a fail state into this mechanic, would that force the players, would that convince the players to find workarounds for it as opposed to engaging with it? I feel like with with a 3d6 system, first of all, I'm going to walk myself through this. The 3d6 system has three success states and only 2 fail states. And if if the players have any amount of bonuses that apply to crafting, or harvesting in this case, the chances of them hitting that fail state drop significantly. This is where we get into the math of it, guys. Mathematically speaking, having any bonus drastically lowers your chance of getting a terrible failure. It doesn't completely remove the chance of getting a failure, but it does mean that having a 2/3 chance of failing versus a 2/5 chance of failing versus a 3/5 chance of succeeding, that number only gets smaller and smaller the more bonuses you have. So this issue that I'm imagining, where players are going to choose to not fight the T-Rex and instead go for easier resources, would really only be an issue in the early game. Once they start getting bonuses to things based on their research and their study, then that risk becomes significantly lesser, at which point they'll be starting to get strong enough to just go out and fight T-Rexes anyway. Okay, so I've talked myself in a circle. I'm back where I began, and I'm no longer worried about this issue. Okay. All right. Go me. Go me. I believe my beautiful wife has messaged me. Oh, Estelle, actually, where did you make I got a notification that Estelle made a comment. How do I see comments? Tasks, keep, add-ons, calendar, explore? No. Where is the comment? Oh. Is this the comment? Oh, there we go. Can I? Oh, there we go. I can read it. Suggestion: make it 0 to 6 because what if your negative bonus puts you below 3? There is not going to be a negative bonus option. The game is not there. I do not plan on including a mechanic where negative modifiers can cancel out your bonuses. Your bonuses are your bonuses. There is going to be a... Oh, we'll get to that in a second. 3 is the lowest you can possibly... The lowest that you can possibly roll with 3d6. Because 1 is the lowest number. Even if you roll all 1s, that's still a 3, right? Instead of having a negative bonus system, I want to have an advantage and disadvantage system where if you have, why did the side thing get weird here? Oh well. Where if you have advantage or disadvantage, instead of rolling, how to play, yeah, let's do this here. Advantage, and we'll bold this and make this bigger. Okay, we'll just make this smaller. Oh, hello. And disadvantage: if you have either roll 4d6 instead of 3d6. If you, pardon me, have advantage, choose the 3 highest rolls and add bonuses. If you have disadvantage, choose the 3 lowest rolls and also add bonuses. I'm not a monster. Yeah. Complain about my grammar. There we go. All right. Is this still bolded? No, it's not. Okay. Yes. So 3 is still the lowest you can possibly get, so I will not be editing that. But thank you for the comment. I appreciate that. Where was I? I was on harvesting. I was considering a fail state. Let's see. On a failure, you get some guff, nothing completely useless, but nothing you'd probably go out and look for either. All right, so like you get some you get the teeth from the T-Rex as opposed to like anything you actually wanted to get. Or if you wanted the teeth, you'll get like the tongue. The tongue is still intact, and maybe you could use that for something. So maybe some waterproofing. I don't fucking know. You'll figure it out. On a terrible failure, you absolutely botch the harvest beyond repair. So if you are specifically harvesting from the legs and you get a terrible failure, not only do you not get the hopper things you wanted from my previous explanation, you actually messed with the legs so much that nothing else of value can really be gathered from it. Depending on how large the monster, I may include when I get to monsters a scale. So let's say here, fine, I'm thinking about it. Why not? Monsters. I'm not correcting that. I'm not correcting that at all. Google Docs, you can just fucking live. Let me live, okay? Let's see here. Monsters have sizes, question marks. Bigger sizes have more chances to harvest or more areas to harvest. So like squirrel would just have squirrel. One chance. Hope you get it. Hello, Sam Knight. Welcome to the stream. We're doing tabletop role-playing development. I don't know if this interests you, but I thank you for being here anyway. Large monsters would have, like, head, body, limb sections. So up to 3 chances to get stuff. More question marks. All the question marks. Why not? And I don't know if this is going to stick, but I had the thought, so I'm writing it down, and I will come back to it at some point in the future. What else are we working on? Back to harvesting. Where did I put bonuses? All right, so in bonuses, I already established there is a 666 super special result, where if you manage to get the maximum on all of your dice, or, 3 6s on all of your dice, on any given roll, that includes disadvantage rolls, you may choose one of the bonuses on that roll and learn a new skill related to it. So if you're harvesting from an animal and you get 3 6s, if you get the 666, I don't have to write a new rule in harvesting. This rule overarches all other rules on any given roll, including harvesting, including crafting, actually. You just get a new skill based on it. Okay, so that's good. I don't have to worry about that. So we have harvesting, we have crafting. The only thing I don't like, I included, so this mathematical formula here, when you're doing crafting, you roll 3d6, right? A normal roll is 3d6 plus bonuses. But I wrote it 3d6 minus x, with x being the number of resources being used. So I wrote that in there to, 1, make crafting slightly more difficult, so that you run the risk of wasting your resources on a crafting build. But also, if I have a negative modifier to crafting based on the number of resources being used, that would mean studying, which is meant to be the same thing, but for smarts as opposed to items, I would then be incentivizing people to always choose study over crafting. Unless I include some kind of detriment to studying, but is adding a detriment to studying worth it? Or does it just make both of those things not ideal if there's going to be... Well, if everyone's super, nobody is. If everything has some kind of negative modifier to it and they're all basically the same, then... All right, let me reread for myself how crafting works again. This is what I wrote down to begin with. Also, let's see who's here. A lot of people I recognize. Hello, everyone. No one's being real active in chat, but that's okay. I forgive you. Say hello, though, if you have access, just so I know I'm not talking to myself. Combining multiple crafting materials together to create something new. That's not a... Crafting is combining multiple materials together to create something new. When attempting to craft something, determine how many different materials you are going to craft with, and roll 3d6 minus x plus bonuses, with x being the number of resources being used. So if we were going to make sleep bombs using sleepy flowers and explosives, that would be 3d6 minus 2 plus however many bonuses I have. I'm assuming at least 1. With x being the number of resources being used, on a success or higher, you manage to craft... You don't understand... Susie doesn't understand TTRPGs, so they're just vibing. I appreciate you vibing. I really do. I really, really do. I'm happy you're here. I'm hoping you find this the least bit interesting. Let me see. Where was I? Right, so then I list off what happens on various success levels. Upon inventing an object, write the recipe down. You can now craft that object without requiring a roll, provided you have the materials and time to do so. On a grand success, you may gain a new bonus related to the object you've created or its materials as if you successfully studied it. Okay, so here's where we have to take this language and switch it around. So with crafting, getting a grand success, like rolling a nat 20, means that you get to skip the studying section and just get the results of studying as if you had done that instead of crafting. So on a nat 20, you get the thing you built, but also the extra knowledge, which means that if I want this to be comparable, then I need to have it flipped. On a ground success for studying, so getting a bonus related to the object you're studying is going to be the baseline for why you study in the first place, and you get some kind of crafting bonus on a grand success? Hold on. I think I have a thought here, but I'm trying to word it out. Alright, similar to crafting, you can gain a new bonus by studying one or more resources. Let's just actually copy and paste the whole thing down here and then change the language to match. I hate that this has... Let's do this. There we go. Now it's all on the same page. Perfect. Alright. Similar to crafting, you can gain a new bonus by studying one or more resources. When attempting to study something, determine how many different materials you are going... How many different topics you are going to study, and roll... We'll keep this math here for a second. We'll probably change that. All right? On a success or higher, you manage to craft an object. You manage to... What would the neutral baseline success be? You're studying something to get a pip. Hold on. Instead, okay, let's change it. You cannot study 2 topics at once. That shouldn't be a thing. Because then someone could say, oh, I study architecture, gun crafting, and baking an apple pie, and I'm going to do it in one downtime session. They can go ahead and they can, like, roll the dice, literally. They can literally just say, I stockpile all of these topics to study because I know that I have bonuses to negate the negative modifier for having all of these topics. And then just hope that the math works in there. There's still a chance. There's always still a chance that they'll actually get a success out of that. So instead of studying different topics, determine which topic you are going to study. They can only study one topic. You're going to study and roll 3d6. I'm going to remove X plus bonuses. I'm not going to have a negative modifier on that. So what this means is if anyone has any input, I would love to hear it. So my thought process here is that there is a negative modifier to crafting because using multiple items in crafting means that you have a chance of adding like 3 different tags. If you're going to have a bomb that has like 5 different tags on it because you used 5 different things, there needs to be a negative to that. The risk needs to match the reward. That's a good phrase. The risk needs to match the reward. You could make a super awesome uber bomb that just one-shots any monster you come across, but in order to make that bomb, to invent that bomb, you have to have a comparably difficult roll, or you could just roll on your first invention and get that uber bomb, and then the rest of the game is kind of pointless unless the DM ramps up the monster difficulty. So since we do not have the option of somehow studying an uber awesome super duper beat the game bomb, you can only study one topic at a time. There's no need to be that much of a risk because the reward is just kind of basic. Okay. Determine which topic you are going to study and roll 3d6 plus bonuses. On a success or higher, you gain 1 skill related to the topic. Okay. So how about, okay, so we have, I mentioned this earlier, we have 2 kinds of skills, right? We have the overarching skills, which is like geometry or weaponsmithing or acrobatics. It's just a broad overarching umbrella, and you can only ever get a +1 from those topics. However, you have to have a +1 in those topics to then study further. So you could have acrobatics, but then you want a specific skill for swinging on vines, right? So once you have 1 pip in acrobatics, you can then spend more time to study swinging from vines, or just swinging, or vines maybe? I don't know. But that can have up to a +3 with each successive study or training session. So I'm going to say that on a success, you get 1 skill related to the topic, or in this case, you learn the topic. Let's say your player wanted to study swinging, but they didn't roll high enough to upgrade. Yeah, hold on. On a great or grand success, however, you may add 1 or more pips related to a previously acquired skill. Okay, So baseline neutral, you get a new skill, which is always good. You have a +1. But if you specifically wanted to upgrade a skill you already have and you only roll a base success, you still get something for it. It still follows the spirit of the thing. You learn something new, but it's not what you wanted, which was to change your +1 to a +2. In order to do that, you have to have a greater grand success. On a greater grand success, however, you may add one or more pips related to a previously acquired skill. No, hold on. Let's switch this to, on a great success, remove the however, you may add 1 pip to a previously acquired related skill. All right, got to word this so that people don't try to use their study roll in archaeology to add pips to the skill they already have in bomb making or something. I don't know. So it has to be a skill you already have. You can add a pip to it. On a grand success, you may add a pip onto 2 separate previously acquired related skills. Okay, so if you get a grand success and you happen to have 2 skills that relate to acrobatics, let's say you have swinging in vines and rolling into a ball. I don't know, whatever. Don't at me. Instead of immediately going from a +1 in those skills to a +2, or to a +3 rather, by adding 2 pips to it, I'm going to force them to break it up. Their study session went so well that 2 separate skills they have got better. Of course, if you have a +2 skill, you can make it +3. If you get a pip for it, that's fine. All right, I like that. And then removing on this, because on a grand success, so this was the extra bit. Oh, maybe. Let me put this into English. So a basic success, they learn something new. Maybe not what they wanted to learn, but they learned something new. On a great success, they can get better at something they already know, specifically. They can choose which skill related to the thing they're studying they upgrade. On a grand success, they can do that twice and also get some sort of crafting bonus so that it's comparable to the crafting. No, that doesn't make any sense. Because if you're studying, like, a flower, during your studying, you might invent something while you were studying the flower. You might accidentally have a eureka moment and invent something. But studying and, like, training your physical body are one mechanic in this game. I didn't differentiate it. Physical skills are treated as if they are mental skills. You have to study that activity to get better at it and to get a bonus when doing it. So it makes no sense if I'm lifting weights. Oh, huzzah, my muscles got so big, I learned how to craft. I don't know. That's not how that works. So maybe instead of having a related crafting bonus, again, the risk matches the reward. There is not as much risk to studying, so there's no reason for you to have a super special, ultra something special at the end. The best possible success gets you a pip in 2 separate skills. That I think is good enough. I think that's good enough. Yes, that needs to be plural. I'm using a lot of words for things. In some parts, I call the +1s or +2s bonuses. In some places, I call them skills. This is only a rough draft. I'm going to have to go back through and edit it for readability and have like an actual like style guide that specifically states what I'm going to call what, and then go through the document and switch those words out so it makes more sense to the layman. But right now, I'm just throwing stuff at a wall. All right. I think it's the best we're going to get out of crafting and study. I think I want to keep the I want to keep the -X here. There needs to be a risk for the reward. So speaking very technically, at the moment, study is the safer option. You have a chance of having a positive push forward. Whereas crafting is more risk reward, but the reward is greater. So I feel like those two balance out. You're going to end up having players who are bad at blackjack and just keep going, hit me, hit me, hit me, and always going for the high risk, high reward. But that's how they want to play, then that's fine. They can do that. They absolutely can do that. Can I hide this? There we go. I hid the side panel. All right, so now I can actually see what I'm doing. What do I need to work on next? Harvesting, crafting, study is fine. Resources, resources is a single paragraph. Resources is a single paragraph. I probably need to include a line about tags in reference to crafting and studying. Include a guide for DMs for creating resources. Oh, here's something I forgot to even consider at this point. So, with Mega Man Legends, the game that kind of inspired the mechanics of this one a little bit, and then I threw things on top of it to make it spicier. Their society in the game works because there are regular people, and then there are diggers. Diggers are the heroes who go down into the ruins underground or underwater, and they collect these energy crystals called Zenny. The energy crystals is not a resource that the people in that universe can make themselves, but it also powers everything. It's their energy source, but it's also a currency. Their entire economy is an energy-based one. Instead of paying in coins, they pay in batteries. And I liked that concept of having money also be a required resource, not just for commerce, but for living. So the idea was that going down and fighting monsters would get you lots of resources. Going dungeon diving would get you fewer resources, but you'd also find more energy crystals, more Zenny, which is copyrighted, so I can't call it that, but for now, I'm going to call it that. And my idea was that crafting weapons and armor would not just require you have the resources. If you can't make it yourself, you'd have to pay someone to do it for you. But that's something that I think is more for the setting of the game as opposed to the mechanics. If I specifically include a coin-ish system, a paywall to content in the game, then whoever plays this, who doesn't want to use my default setting, will have to wrangle with that. It's like how D&D is meant for dungeon delving, and if you want to play D&D without any dungeon delving, you have to do a lot of bending over backwards to make sure that everyone's characters play the way they think they're going to play. Because removing the dungeon delving in a game where you're meant to dungeon delve kind of messes up the entire game balance. People do it because people seem to think that D&D can play any game you can just mod D&D to get any experience you want, and that's not how it works. I have fallen out of love with Dungeons and Dragons and Wizards of the Coast, and I try not to be too salty about it, but I have experienced the indie tabletop role-playing scene, and there are just I'm gonna hop up on my soapbox for just 1 second. There are so many different experiences out there. It may require a little bit of investment from you to learn a new system, but once you do, D&D is so limiting. It's so limiting. And if you're going to spend a week and a half modding D&D to be the game you want it to be, why not start with a game that's meant for that experience? So that's where I'm at. That's why I'm here. I couldn't get what I wanted out of D&D, so I said, fuck it, I'll write my own game. Anyway. So a guide for DMs about creating resources. Zenny. I'm going to leave this paragraph here, but I'm going to ignore it for now. You know what? I think I'm going to ignore the entire resource section for right now. I don't feel like writing this right now. I'm going to come back to it. Someone's yelled at me in Discord. Is it anything that I need to deal with right now? No. No, it absolutely is not. Okay. Well, we'll ignore that then. I'll just ignore that then. Outputs. Oh, here's something. Okay. So if you've been here long enough and you've heard me talking about chips like 45 minutes ago, I wanted to include a pseudo magic system, not a real magic system, but I wanted there to be a difference between people who wanted to have weapons and hit things and people who wanted to stand back and do cool flashy stuff, right? So I included the concept of an output. Let's do a real quick refresher of body slots. So, what did I mess this up? Can you eat the chips? No. I'm going to say no. Oh, I know. I added advantage up here and that shifted everything down. Well, I hate that. I hate that a lot. But okay. So the body chips you can install into your robot body give you modifications to the actions you can do with your body and different bonuses based on what you're doing. So, and depending on, instead of having a specific chip for each body part, so you don't find like a head fire chip that goes only in your head, you find a fire chip and you determine where you want to install it because each section of your body alters how the fire chip can be used. So if you plugged fire chip into your head slots are for sensory, sight, hearing, perception. You could say, I have a fire chip in my head, which means I now have, what's the word? Not heat vision like Superman, but like, is it infrared? That firefighters use to determine like where heat sources are to see where people as opposed to fire is? Yeah. So if you install a fire chip into your head, you can say, hey, this fire chip in my head means that I can now switch on like an infrared heat vision, which means that whenever I do a roll that requires me to like notice something involving heat sources, I can roll a bonus to that maybe, I guess. I'm just making something up. Body slot is hardiness and energy storage, resistance to kinds of damage, as well as upgrades to HP or energy. So if you plugged a fire chip into your body, you would have a resistance to damage that is fire-based. If you are attacked by a fire-breathing robot, you can take less damage because you have a fire chip installed in your body, all right? Arm slots are offensive upgrades, which means that if you have it plugged into your arm, you can choose to attack with fire, which means that any damage that you do with your weapon, it'll shoot fire along with it. You'll have like 1,000-degree butter knife or something, and whatever you attack, that damage now has fire, and certain enemies will have like different resistances and vulnerabilities, so there's like an element circle to it. We'll get to that. And then leg slot is mobility and movement. If you have fire, you can say, I can now walk on lava and it can't hurt me. I'm now immune to lava when I can walk on hot surfaces or something like that, right? However, sometimes people just want to cast Fireball and shoot a bunch of fire out at people, okay? So the idea of having an output. At character creation, you may install an output in one of the 4 slot sections. An output is an exhaust port through which pure emissions of an installed element may be produced. Unlike the limitations placed upon installed chips, actions involving an output may be of any logical type required by the situation, right? So if you have an output installed in your body, may use an installed fire chip to make an attack action despite body chips being purely defensive, right? So, can I eat the chips? I won't let that stop me. Okay, thank you, Susie. So, the 4 slot types are meant to allow you to have restrained, yet you have, like, not limited, but you have, like, a natural boundary for your creativity. You cannot install a fire chip and say that you now have the power to go supernova. That's not an option. Depending on where you installed it, depends on what you can do with that fire chip, how you translate that fire chip. However, if you have an outlet installed in the same part of your body that you install an element chip, you can choose either or. You can launch a fireball to attack someone if you have say you have an output in your forehead, or no, in your mouth. Let's say you say, hey, I'm going to install an output on my head, specifically in my mouth. I have some sort of ability to launch shit from my mouth. And DM's like, okay, sure. So if you install a fire chip into your head slot, right? The same place that you have an output, you can choose to use that heat vision I mentioned, or something similar, right? But you also have the option of opening your mouth and breathing fire, okay? Which can be used to push yourself back, like, so a mobility thing. You can use it to, like, I don't know, attack someone. That's an offensive thing. Normally that would have to be in your arm. So you can mix and match baby flame the DM. There you go. You get the idea. So outputs are just another way of customizing your character. And I haven't figured out how you're going to get more outputs. Eventually, you're going to add outputs. As your character levels up, you'll have additional outputs you can install elsewhere to make better use of the chips you have installed, so on and so forth. You know what? Risk versus reward. Throw in a line about how using a chip through an output does not mean you can double up on bonuses from that chip. So normally, if you did an action, let's stick with the flame chip idea, okay? Let's say you wanted to use your heat vision to sense if there are any heat sources on the other side of a wall, right? And because you have that heat vision, you're using a flame chip, you get an automatic +1 to that roll. Like, it's not enough that you in the fiction you can do that. It also gives you a mechanical benefit. However, if you are going to use your mouth breath, flame breath, to attack someone, you can't then say, also, hey, wouldn't you know it, I got a flame chip installed in there, so I get a +1 for that flame chip. No. You're already using the flame chip to be able to expel flame from your mouth to begin with. You don't get an extra bonus on top of that. That's ridiculous. If you have other bonuses, either from your knowledges, your skills, or from other chips you have installed, then yeah, get bonuses from those. But using an output in the first place, it's kind of already a bonus enough by itself. You don't gotta double up with a flame chip. Does that make sense? Note, we need some kind of level up option to add more outputs onto your body. maybe combine that into the body upgrade system? Something I have not given any thought to, aside from knowing that I want to do it, is that at a certain point in the game, instead of just doing light body mods, inserting chips, I want the players to be able to completely replace limbs. I want them to graft on a tail, or wings, or take their arm off and replace it with a machine gun. I want there to be a way that they can permanently change their body from being a humanoid form with some superpowers installed to being a big giant robot if they so desire. Thinking about the designs for like Mega Man Reploids, Mega Man characters, the main characters have a bunch of different powers because they're twinks, basically. Like, hold on, can I just... Okay, right here, okay? Mega Man Reploids, they're twinks. They're twinks that have powers, and you can switch out, like, elements and shit, because that's their one thing, right? We already have the switching out of elements and power-ups in the game, but I want to reach a point where the game can recreate... Oh, hold on, I want to put in Mavericks. That's the word for the big giant robot. Not the baseball team, you... basketball team. Mega Man Mavericks. Well, this... Yeah. What's a good picture I can use? Yeah. I want the game to have the option that you could start off having a regular humanoid form, but then you can upgrade yourself to be like a robot furry, or a jet plane, or a big lumbering Hulk. If you want to be a robot stag beetle, I want my game to include the option, as in twink, yeah, like the super skinny cute gay boys. Yeah, that's the word I'm going for, right? If you want to start off with a humanoid form, but then change your head out for a hawk's head and add wings, I want my game to be able to let you do that. Not right off the bat, because that might get too... What the fuck is this guy? Oh god, it's a robot ostrich, isn't it? It's a robot ostrich. Mega Man's weird. Mega Man is weird. Oh, here's a better example. Can I zoom in on you? There we go. Yeah. I want people to be able to, like, make themselves a giant turtleneck if they so desire. I want them to have the option to modify their body to their heart's content with only the amount of resources their character can collect and the DM's fiat stopping them. That's what I want from this game. So maybe having a single output at character creation and then giving them the option of installing outputs as part of their massive body modification later on is better? Maybe. Let's include that body upgrade system text here. And I'm going to make you larger and bold. And I'll come back to you at some point in the future. So yeah, maybe instead of having the ability to put in multiple outputs, you choose one, and that's your one. If you want anything more, you gotta do some serious investing into changing your body to make room, make room for more. Okay, that works. What else do we need? So I'm going to leave outputs as it is now. Body upgrade system, not going to touch. Resources, not going to touch. Weapons, combat, and monsters. Let's look at moves for like 2 seconds. We've almost been going for about 2 hours, so I'm probably going to finish up in the next like 10-15 minutes. So let's do one more section and call that a night. We've probably hit 400 words, haven't we? I'm sure we have. All right. So this is a holdover from my experiences using Powered by the Apocalypse. In those games, in Powered by the Apocalypse, instead of having a list of actions, you have moves. And moves are like a paragraph of text, which is themed around whatever kind of genre the game is actively trying to recreate. And it's kind of a, if this, then this, or when this, then that. Okay? And at first my thought was there was only going to be 4 kinds of moves. Anything you can do falls under those kinds of moves. All right? But then I got the brilliant idea to include action and reaction variants, which technically bumped it up to 8. So the idea is, right, when you do anything, you roll 3d6 plus bonuses, and then check against this chart, okay? When you get a failure or a terrible failure, the DM chooses what happens, no ifs, ands, or buts. The player has no say in what happens next. But if they roll high enough, a great success or a grand success, they get to choose from a list of good benefits they would like to happen as a result of their good roll. So let's see some of the examples. What's a good one? Yeah, I did endure pretty good. Okay? So endure, which generally is muscling through, rolling with the blow, stomaching Ty's mom's cooking. That's a fun joke for the Digimon people in the audience. You'll get that one. You'll get that one. So if you did an effect, let's do the reaction first. If someone were to attack you and you choose, instead of dodging it, you're going to stand there and endure it. The specifics will depend on the situation, but if at the core you choose to stand there and take the blow and you roll high enough, you can choose, hold on, let me see, 4 kinds of moves? Yes, so if you get a great or a grand roll, not a basic success, you can choose an additional bonus to whatever it is you did. Yeah, Thelios, you're late. Shouldn't you be in bed? I'm so... You don't have to be here. Go to sleep. Go to sleep, pal. Yeah, for a great roll, you choose 1 option. For a grand roll, you can choose 2. Oh, here's the thing. So each individual chip, fire chips, sonar chips, would have their own list of possible grand or great move options. Does that make sense? So here, I'm doing a bad way to explain this. So let's just say you have no chips, no bonuses to it, right? Someone attacks you, and you say, as a reaction, I'm going to endure it. And you roll a great or a grand. On a great, you can choose 1, which I've listed as examples. Lower damage taken by 1. Gain an advantageous position. Or prevent an incoming status effect. So if you know that what you're fighting is going to, stun you, you can, and you roll high enough, you can say, hey, I'm going to choose prevent an incoming status effect. You eat the damage, whatever else the attack does happens, but your character does not get stunned and can move freely their next round. Okay? If, however, you were to roll grand, God. No, Thelios. This is very specifically not D&D. I'm not going to get into the whole rant, but D&D has some very specific design things that make it D&D. This is a little bit of everything from other games that I've played. But if you think of D&D as that game where you pretend to be a fantasy character and roll dice to see how well you do, then yes, this is D&D. All right, I'll give you that. But yeah, if you roll a grand, you can choose 2 of these effects. All right? Now here's a kicker. I mentioned up here, if a chip modifies the action taken, include its special option to the list. But, unless specified, assume you cannot take more options than usual. So in this situation, endure, right? This is the list of things you can choose from if you roll high enough while enduring as a reaction. But if you have a chip that's installed, like a fire chip or something installed, all right, we'll stick with the fire chip, that you think would change the manner in which you endure that attack. Let's say that the enemy is attacking you with an ice attack, and you have a fire chip installed in your body, and you're enduring that ice attack. You could say, hey, I have a fire chip. I feel like this should alter how my body interacts with the thing that's happening to me. So the DM will be like, okay, you're right. Go ahead and roll, and you roll a grand, okay? The fire chip, I don't have them yet, but the fire chip will eventually include a short list of potential options for moves that use that chip, right? And if you roll high enough, you can add that option list to this list right here. So instead of having just 3 options to choose from, you can say, well, okay, my fire chip allows me to include this option on the list and this option on the list. So here's the list of things I can choose from as a result of rolling high enough. Does that make sense? So by modifying your character, by modifying your body, you not only get bonuses to actions, you also can modify the options. You can modify the potential results that your actions can take vis-a-vis this system. Now, if that sounds confusing to you, I am sorry. It makes sense to me, but putting it into English is where I'm failing. The downside of this is that instead of having 4 moves, which is movement, attack, endure, and sense, which was meant to be a small list of things you can do to make it easier to remember them, I have added, well, there's an action variant, there's a reaction variant, so that makes there's 8 moves. And each move has 2 or 3 options, depending on how good you roll. And then those option lists are expanded by the options that are included in whatever chips you have installed. All of a sudden, this game requires a lot more reading than I'm sure most people are willing to do. I would do it. I mean, I'm writing this game. I wouldn't put something in here that I wouldn't be willing to do. But I also know that I have ADHD and I have a lot of weird hobbies. So, like, I am not the average layman here. Like, this movement system, this moves system would probably be what turns people off. I think it gives enough structure to allow people to be creative with the actions they choose to do in the game, what they choose to do. No, I'm writing this. Yeah. This game, Cry for Halcyon, I'm writing this from scratch. Eventually, this is just the first draft, though. How many pages are we on? We have 7 pages so far, and it's all currently in Comic Sans. But yes, I'm writing this. So I feel like this moves section needs to be trimmed down somehow, or simply removed. I'm considering removing this section entirely and only keeping the bonuses section. The bonuses is much simpler. I have a chip that gives me +1 when I do this. And when you do this, you go, oh, that's right. I have a chip that lets me do +1. But also, you have studying, you have knowledge. So not only do I have a chip that gives me +1, I also know something about this. So that gives me a +1 or +2 or +3. That's significantly simpler than saying, I want to do this, figuring out which of these 8 options that counts as, and then rolling and choosing a result to it. The good thing about this, right? The reason why I wanted there to be a list is because Yeah, your messages are only showing up once in chat. And I think they're only showing up once in the text boxes above my camera. So I think you're okay. It's probably just on your end. The reason why I wanted this system right here, where you have a list of things that will happen for rolling high or higher. The reason I wanted that was because it takes pressure off the DM, right? If I didn't have this system, someone rolls a great, and they say, okay, DM, tell me what's the one good extra thing that happens because I rolled so good. And the DM is then on the spot. Like, the DM's job is to make stuff up. Like, that's what a DM does. But they're put on the spot to come up with something that's good enough for a great roll, but not so good that it's more of a grand roll result. It gives a little more structure. The player chooses what good thing they want to happen, and the DM's job is to make that good thing make sense in the context of what's happening in the game. They don't have to come up with a good thing and then also the consequence of that good thing. Because there's always the risk if the DM decides they don't want it. If the DM comes up with something that the player doesn't think is good enough, that leads to arguments. And while I would not choose to keep an argumentative player at my table, I, as a DM, would say, no, you're being a dick, please leave, even if it was a friend. If there's one thing I've learned from reading Reddit in the D&D sections, it's that most people do not know how to tell their players no. And a lot of people play D&D because it makes them feel powerful, and winning arguments makes them feel powerful. So in my game, if I can prevent that even slightly, if I can give the DM a tool to take the heat off of themselves, take the weight off of their shoulders, and place it on the player for the player to figure it out, then, all the better. All the better. Another thing, which I'll point out here, is that we are currently reading all of this information in a paragraph form. It's like a full page's worth of text in size 10 Comic Sans. When I make this into a printable PDF, I could probably fit each of these onto like a playing card's worth of space. So then, even though we have an action and reaction variant of each of the 4 options, we would still only have the 4 options. Okay, hold on. Yeah, actually. If I specifically designed this information so that it would each section would fit on a playing card, then the players could print out those cards, and instead of a page of information, they have 4 cards in their hands they can flip through to be like, okay, this feels like, the thing I want to do feels like a sense. Let's see. Sense, action, these are my options if I roll high enough. Ooh, I want that. I specifically want to gain additional information for doing an investigate active sense roll. And all it takes, instead of flipping through a book, you have it on a playing card. You flip it, it's right there in front of you. You go blah, blah, blah. But then you go, oh, wait a minute. I also have chips. If I put the information for the chips on a playing card size thing as well, then that's the same thing. That's tactile. I'm having a brain blast right now. This isn't like groundbreaking game design, but it's the first time I've thought of it for this project. Okay. If I include a tactile option, or people can print these cards out to have in front of them, that might actually negate my worry about having too many options, because instead of flipping through pages trying to find the exact thing they're looking for, they have it in front of them. They can sift through them card by card while they're sitting doing something else, listening to someone else take their turn. Okay. Okay. All right, that actually makes me feel better. All right. I'm gonna need a notes section for this. Put each one on a playing card sized area for easy printing and perusal. A page of this shit makes you go cross-eyed. Addendum, do the same for upgrade chips blocks. And then we're going to switch that back down to regular font. Okay. We have reached a 2-hour mark. Let's try and fill out some of these move options. And then from there, we'll probably end the stream in like 5-10-ish minutes. All right. Let's see. What do we need? So Endure needs a better name. Because right now, reaction is Endure. Reactions are what happens when someone does something to you. And it's normally like dodging, parrying. It's what you do as a reaction to someone else's action. Whereas an action is the active. I'm just doing word spaghetti right now. There's a difference between hitting someone with the sword and using the sword to knock their sword away. Does that make sense? So, in this case, the reaction variant is Endure, and the action variant is Endure, but spicy. We need better names for that. And this is a bad option. Stand your ground means nothing. Because the idea is that on a basic success, if you choose to spend your action enduring something, a success means you have endured it. These options are bonuses on top of that. So shake off a status effect. If you choose to, if you are like paralyzed or on fire, and instead of like wasting a whole turn, wasting like 2 turns trying to find something to put it out, you can choose to just remain on fire and instead attack people. So shake off a status effect. Stand your ground is bad. What would I want if I were to be under the affliction of something? Like mom's cooking. If I am poisoned, if I am on fire, if I am paralyzed, and I choose to spend my action just gritting my teeth and bearing it, what bonuses would I want to happen on a really good roll? So shaking off a status effect is one of them. I want at least 3 to this, if possible. We could probably copy gain an advantageous position. So let's say you are on fire, right? Let's say you're on fire, and instead of putting yourself out, you choose to like endure it, and then you choose gain an advantageous position. Gaining an advantageous position means you could then use your being on fire to maneuver yourself somewhere that will help either your party or yourself. You could use your being on fire to block the enemy from reaching another member of your party. Okay, I like that. I like that. You use your current your status, instead of removing that status, you can use it to your benefit. What's another one? Time to set myself on fire and punch an ice elemental in the face. You get it. let's say that's actually not a bad idea. Instead of putting yourself out, maybe there can be an option where you endure it for 1 turn. And if you successfully endure it, you can then use that status as a bonus to your next attack. I'm going to type in power up your next attack roll. So if you are on fire, you can then say, hey, I'm on fire. The next time I hit this fool, they're going to take some fire damage as a result of me being actively ablaze. Obviously, for things like, say, a paralysis or a tied up status, I haven't written out actual status effects for this game, so obviously some work needs to be done. This is the first draft. Obviously, this would require some finagling, but I imagine if you have a creative enough player and a willing enough DM, this would actually balance out somehow. If you possibly had a perk or skill that added damage proportional to damage you get, that's not a bad idea. That could be neat. With the bare bones stuff that I've written down here, with the system as it is, I don't know of any combination of things that would allow you to do that. But hopefully this game will be customizable enough that yes, you could have that be a thing. So like if you were on fire, you could just keep rolling endure to take damage but not be completely out of the fight, and then you could turn that back into a massive hit. I don't know. I'd figure that something out. I have to figure that out somehow. All right, so that's that. We got 3 for endure. I'm happy with that. Sense doesn't have anything. Attack has something. Movement has nothing. I don't even have a name for the action variant of movement. Like some enduring berserker. This game is being written specifically to be so ridiculously customizable that at some point you could particularly try and recreate that battle type. But right now it's mostly just me throwing things at a wall and seeing what the spaghetti sticks. Let's go to sense. All right, so sense moves are like look, see, hear, consider, or learn. It involves the head, the thinking, the gaining of information, the translating of it into anything useful, and then using that to go forward. So, action variant, investigate. Purposefully attempt to gain information. That's actually the point. I didn't include an explanation for what each one is meant to be. So this is what kind of move it is. Action or reaction. This is the name of that particular move. And then this is a design ethos that I did not include in this next one. So endure but spicy. Choose to stomach your current position. We'll go with that. What if you didn't roll high enough? You could get an informational overload and suffer like 1d4 damage. This game, well, first of all, this game only uses d6s, which are the square dice. Do I have a... Yeah, I have a bag of d6s right here. It's the square dice you get in like Monopoly. Everyone has at least a handful of d6s around the house. I prefer using d6s. d20s are like... They're aesthetic. Everyone sees that and thinks, oh, tabletop role-playing. But also, like, there's some math issues with using a d20. It works for D&D because the game is based around it. But you know, this is not D&D, so I'm not doing that. As for there being negative repercussions if you don't roll high enough, we are not, how do I word this in a way that isn't too jargony? We are not writing down how the failure states are meant to work. Failures are specifically for the DM's goal. They're the DM's role. When someone fails their role, or worst case scenario, gets a terrible failure, whatever bad stuff happens next is entirely up to the DM. having the players choose what bad things happen to them, having options for what bad things happen, limits the possibilities for the world to interact with the players. So if someone got a terrible failure on a sense roll, for example, they wouldn't notice the giant robot Tyrannosaurus around the corner until it was too late, right? That would be the result of the DM knowing what takes place in the world and choosing a relevant bad thing to happen to them as a result of that. On the flip side, because this game, all dice rolling is done by the players. The action is what they do, what they choose to do, and the reaction is what they do when something else does something to them. The power is always in the player's hands, and if they succeed, how they succeed is up to them as well, which is why they have options. Instead of saying, I rolled a nat 20, and the DM is like, okay, well, I guess the guy just explodes. No, the players now have a list of good things that can happen if they roll high enough. So they get to choose. They have control over what their character does. Whereas I don't want the game to remove control of how the world reacts to the character. That's the DM's job. Does that make sense? Did I say the same thing 3 times in a row? I probably did. That tends to be how I explain things. I say the exact same thing, but I reword the sentence each time, so I feel like I'm giving more information than I actually am. It's just the same thing 3 times in a row. So, but yes, that's that. Thank you for your input, though. I am absolutely for any and all input, even if it doesn't really fit with the design ethos of this current project. I really do enjoy getting feedback from people. Okay, so yeah, choose a stomach, your current position. I hope you finish and maybe publish this. That's the goal. That's the goal. At the very least, absolutely a more refined version of it. Absolutely. This is only the first draft. This is just me putting everything on the paper and then taking a step back and looking at it and saying, okay, now we have to edit it to make sense, to make sure all the moving parts actually fit together. Then we're going to go once over for, I mentioned earlier how I have like 3 different names for the same thing. At some parts of this document, I call the +1s and the +2 you get, I call them bonuses, I call them skills, I refer to as topics you study, which means I'm going to have to, at some point, start from the beginning, determine exactly what I want each thing to be called, and then fix the language so it's called the same thing all throughout the book, because otherwise people get confused really quickly. It was like, gotta mention this thing called bonuses? Is that like skills? Is that, they sound the same. Are they different? How do I do this? But anyway. Endure. Basically the same thing, but someone's doing shit to you. I don't know. I'll just call it that. Okay. So, action variant, investigate. Purposefully attempt to gain information. So on a regular success, you would baseline, you gain that information, right? Now we need to get the bonuses. I've already put down gain additional information. For example, say I want to use my supersonic hearing to listen and see if I hear anything on the other side of this door. A regular success would be you hear scuffling on the other side of that door. Something seems to be like digging around. Getting a great, you can choose gain additional information, which could be you hear something scuffling on the other side of that door. From the footsteps, you can tell there are 3 of them, right? So what else would we do? So basically, we gain 1 pip of additional information. We The guidelines are look, see, hear, consider, and learn. I should just be throwing things up here and not thinking too hard about it. So investigate. I investigate something. I'm looking for something. I gain information. I can gain an additional piece of information. I can discern if the information is true. Because if you're like reading a book or using this investigate movement to like interrogate someone, it's entirely possible that the information you're getting isn't accurate. Okay? Discern if the information is true. What else? Gain information, determine the validity of that information, make a connection, maybe make a connection between the information and a relevant skill. So, for example, let's say you're investigating a room, and at first, what you tell the DM you're looking for is you're looking for signs that someone has been here in the last 24 hours, all right? And you roll great or grand, and you determine whether or not someone has been here. Could be a yes, could be a no. But then you say, I would like to make a connection between the information and a relevant skill. Let's say the answer is yes, and you have a skill in, like, tracking or something. The DM can be like, okay, yeah, sure. You can tell someone has been here because there are tracks leading into and out of the room that you couldn't see before. Like, you look really closely and you see there's some light tracks. You can see a pair of feet come in and then go back out. And from that point on, like, you can say, oh, well, now I can just track this person and go on from there. But the skills can be anything like, But does this remove the DM's power over the world? Because let's say the DM did not intend, let's say you're playing a character that all of their skills have to do with hunting and tracking animals, right? And the DM did not intend for the players to be able to track down whoever it is they're looking for. The DM had no plans on this. There shouldn't be dirt on the ground for there to be footprints for the players to track, right? The DM may feel forced to look at the list of skills that player has and just pull something out of their hat, come up with a connection, even if there isn't one. I'm going to put a question mark next to this, because I do feel like that might be a little too... That might be too much controlling the world on the player's part, not enough controlling what they do themselves. All right, so reaction variant. Reactions are when something happens to you, this is something you attempt to do. This is something you can attempt to do before that thing happens. And so far, I've put down reaction variant as perceive. It's the opposite of investigate. Investigate is you specifically look for something, whereas perceive is you get information, but it's passive. You notice something without really looking for it. So here I've listed, ask the DM a number of questions they must answer honestly. The problem with that, I like this mechanic. Since the DM controls the world, they can have things happen that your character isn't aware of, and this perceive reaction is meant to mitigate that somewhat. So, for example, you may not know there's a bunch of robot wolves in the rafters preparing to pounce, but if you have the reaction perceive, they can pounce at you, and then you can say, well, no, I'm going to roll to see if my character perceived them a split second before they pounced, which would then give them a chance to like do that cool anime thing where like the camera like zooms in on their eyes and there's a lightning bolt as it clicks like there's someone behind me, and then like teleports behind you, nothing personnel kid, that sort of thing, right? But if it's specifically a reaction variant and it's things that the players can't possibly know is going to happen, then what's going to stop the players from trying to perceive every 5 seconds and the DM then punishing them for not perceiving when they entered this new room? That doesn't seem very fun to me. That's a common misconception, actually. Athelio says, I wish I could DM, but my voice acting is terrible. You don't need to voice act to DM. A lot of great DMs do voice acting, and it can really help their players feel invested and involved in the fiction. But you absolutely do not need to voice act in order to DM a game. You don't even have to have a script. You don't even have to say lines. So, if I had to DM, I would want my players to have the best experience possible. Well, that's true, but not all of us can be Matt Mercer. This is gonna be a segment of generic DM advice right here, okay? Every game is different, and not everyone can be or should be Matt Mercer. I have played in games where instead of putting on a voice and talking as though I am the character, I would be like, my character walks up to a shopkeep and would like to ask them if they have any potions. And the DM would be like, well, the shopkeep says, yes, we do. It says, yes, they have potions. They have this potion, that potion, and that potion, and here's how much they cost. And I would say, okay, well, my character is going to buy this potion and that potion, thank the shopkeep, and go back to the party. He goes, all right. And the game would continue like that. It would be kind of like an old like point-and-click adventure as opposed to like a big bombastic role-playing experience. And that game was perfectly fun. It was perfectly fine. I've played in games where the DM talked as characters, but couldn't do character voices to save her life. So instead of doing a different voice for each character, she would have each character do different dialogue. She would always sound like herself, but she would use, not an accent, but she would use turns of phrase. Like, one character was, like, really gruff, so he would only speak in, like, short sentences. He'd look at someone and go, yep, nope, don't do that. But it was always in her voice. And then she'd have another character who's, like, constantly drunk, so she'd sound like herself, but she would slur a few of her words to make herself sound drunk. I've also played in games with ridiculous amounts of voice acting. I try to do voice acting. I once DM'd a game called Interstitial, which is a Powered by the Apocalypse game based on Kingdom Hearts. It's a massive crossover game where you can basically go to any world you want, not just Disney worlds. And I had my players go to a Muppets world. Let's see. Hey ho, Kermit the Frog here. I had to talk like Kermit the Frog for every time he said something. And, it got okay. It was fine. They kind of got the point across. But they really loved my Toad voice! Yeah, Toad was a character, and I talked like Toad every time Toad said something! And, it went over great. But it wasn't required. I could have said, Kermit says this to you, and they would say, oh, my character says this back, and we still would have had a good time. So, yes, I understand the desire to have your players have the best gaming experience possible, but voice acting is not a must. If you are not good at one thing, that just means you got to figure out what you are good at and include a lot of that. I know in my games, I am not good at role-playing as characters who are charismatic. I am a very awkward person, and when I am in the spotlight and I am playing with a character who's trying to fast talk the character I'm playing, they always succeed because I'm super awkward and I cannot make up on the fly just hard out no, that's not gonna fly with this character. So instead, I focus on simulation stuff. I focus on living world. I introduce characters and events that make it feel as though time moves on, even though the players aren't physically there. I keep track very closely of how much time has passed. I make visible changes to places when they return to them, and I continue in my head the life story of like 20 different NPCs for the characters to see that things have changed and grown. And my players, when they played in my games, have really enjoyed that, even if the actual characters themselves are a little wishy-washy. So, yeah, that's my generic advice. If you are interested in playing tabletop games in general, I would strongly suggest you look up Matt Colville. I'm going to type it into chat, actually. He has a YouTube channel, Matt Colville, okay? He is a gentleman who has been playing tabletop games for years. He is a writer. He writes books. He was a designer on that video game that came out on the Xbox. Oh, what was the one before one? Did it go from the Xbox 360 to the Xbox One? It couldn't have. There had to be one in the middle, wasn't there? Anyway, he was the head writer for the game Evolve, which was an interesting, like, party shooter. But he's worked in the game industry, and he has a series of YouTube videos called Running the Game. And it's primarily about Dungeons and Dragons, but it's all of his DM advice in one place. I listen to them like podcasts. They're usually like between 20 to 40 minutes long an episode, and he's been doing them for years. I would heavily suggest you listen if you are interested in running any tabletop. A lot of it is specifically for D&D, but most of it is just generic DM advice, and I swear by it, honestly. Give him a listen if you're interested. Love that man. Alright. We were doing something. Ask the DM a number of questions. Okay, so the issue I'm having here is that the reaction variant, the opposite, the reaction of sense is currently perceive. Is that what my issue is? Is my issue the name I've given it as opposed to the concept? Let's try changing what we call it before we change how it works mechanically. So let's cut you, and we're gonna put you in your own little box, perceive. You live by yourself here, so we don't lose you. But we're going to put someone else in your space for right now. Please don't be too upset with me, perceive. The word perceive. Okay, so let's pretend we never saw that it was called perceive. It's a reaction variant of the senses. So you're sensing something in reaction to the world doing something at you. And the mechanic is currently ask the DM a number of questions they must answer honestly. So what if let's modify this further. They must answer honestly. If you I don't want to say spend a resource, because we don't really have a resource in this game yet. If you X, we'll leave that blank for now. If you X, no, hold on. If you choose to act on the information, you may make one action So my thought process is, something happens to you, and you register, this reaction variant allows you to register what it is that's happening. You ask questions about what's happening in that split second. In that split second before it actually really happens. So let's use the wolf example. There are wolves in the rafters. The raptors? The rafters. There are wolves above the ceiling, and your party is walking through. Your character, the wolves are going to pounce, and your character is at this last split second going to do that zoom in MMA lightning bolt. I know they're there now. In that slowdown, in that time freeze segment, you roll perceive. You get to ask a number of questions from a list of questions, and the DM has to answer honestly. If you then take that information, you can immediately use that information to perform an action. So, like, you can spin around and slash at the wolves. You could grab the person next to you and jump out of the way. You could choose to do an action move in response to the wolves attacking, where normally you'd only have a reaction. But what's to stop you from doing this sense reaction variant every single time anything happens? Does it have, maybe it specifically has to be unseen. You react to a previously unseen danger. Ask the DM a number of questions they must answer honestly. If you choose to immediately act on the information, you may make one action. So maybe instead of the players being able... Okay, so the sentence, you react to a previously unseen danger, which means that something has to have appeared in, like, the last second. In this case, the wolves pouncing. You see a tail slinking, a large robotic tail disappearing behind a corner. The player can either do any other action and respond to that, or they can have a reaction where they can get more information about that thing they just saw. If you choose to immediately act on the information, you may make one action without applying bonuses or selecting options for great or grand rolls. Okay, so this is risk reward, right? If you spend the entire game trying to argue with your DM that you can use the reaction perceive in response to everything, yeah, you should go to sleep. I've been going for 2.5 hours. I said at, like, the 1 hour, 55 minute mark, I was going to finish in, like, 5 minutes. But then I kind of got on a roll. So now we're at 2 hours and 38 minutes. Whoops. Bye, Thelios. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate your input. Where was my thought process? I've lost it. I almost grabbed... the cap's on, so it's fine, but I almost grabbed my bottle of nail polish remover to chug. That wouldn't have been good. No, my glass of water is right here. Okay. So, what was I saying? Yes. The player could spend every single response to everything, every reaction they ever do, they could choose to do perceive, ask some questions, get more information from those questions, and then get an extra action on top of that, which is technically the mechanically best way of doing anything. Someone comes at you with something. You not only get to have a freeze frame where you learn something, you then get to do something else at that person in response. Susie's on the exact same thing with a bottle of hydrochloric acid cleaner. No, don't drink that. Don't drink that. No, 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 no. Don't drink that. But yeah, so you could do that every single turn. But there's a drawback, which means the action that you do in response has no bonuses, and even if you get a great or grand, you only ever get the basic success. So I feel like maybe that's enough. Let's put Perceive back where we found her. She can go back. We'll leave it at that. We've added enough stipulations that I feel like it's not the end of the world. Now, what do we want the questions to be? Oops, that's a caps lock, not tab. You gotta... Alright, bye, Sam Knight. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate it. I hope you found this entertaining. What questions could we ask? What is the immediate danger? What is the quickest way out of this situation? Who is most in danger right now? So, what is the immediate danger? Could be obvious. It's the wolves hopping out of the rafters. But asking this question, the DM might say the one that's closest to you, the first one that jumped, the one that's heading straight for you, is the leader of the pack. So now you know that's the one we have to get rid of first because the others follow its lead, right? If you ask, what is the quickest way out of this situation? The DM might say the quickest way out is to fight back, or the quickest way out is to run, right? And then you can shoot. You can say, okay, I'm going to run. And then who is most in danger right now? In this situation, it would be, you. But if the danger is, say, let's see, who is most in danger? Maybe it's the person in your party that has, like, all of the clinking clanks on their armor that makes the most noise. If you see, like, a tail disappear around a corner, you could ask, who is most in danger right now? And the DM could say, your buddy Bill over there, who is making enough noise to wake the dead, is going to be the first one to alert that monster that you're here. Now, in those situations, like I state, if you choose to immediately act on the information, you may take one action. So, in the instance of what is the immediate danger, the alpha, you can choose to do something to stop the alpha. But if you don't want to do that, you don't get an action from this reaction. You simply have to take whatever's coming and go on from there. Let me add question marks to the end of this. Okay. Alright, okay. Alright, okay. I don't like that we needed a whole paragraph to explain this. But it was necessary. I'll see about maybe like shortening that description a bit in the future. Let's see here. All right, what else we got? So we got endure. Endure's fine. Attack and movement. Susie says, I'm kind of sad I don't really understand the jargon because it sounds super interesting. Having you be here spending time with me is more than enough support. Maybe at some point, once this is no longer a single, like a first draft, once this book is refined to a point where anyone can read it and kind of get it, maybe we'll play it. I would love to have you. Not necessarily, not even on stream necessarily, maybe in a private setting. I'm sure Jun and Estelle would lose their minds playing a game with you. It would be great. All right, so sense is down, endure is down. We have attack and movement. I'm gonna just do attack and leave movement for myself later, and then I really do have to stop streaming. All right, so attack. Attempt to cause harm to a foe. All right, this is specifically trying to hurt someone. Whereas parry is meet and redirect. Let's more use it language. An incoming attack. All right. So you can only use parry if someone is attacking you. Whether that person means to or not. So this would also count for like falling rocks. You can try and use parry to like knock the rocks away. The rock has no ill feelings towards you, probably, but it would still count as an attack as something is attempting to cause harm, whether it means to or not. So currently, action variant. Do additional harm. Weapons are going to have static damage. So your sword is always going to do, let's say, 2 points of damage to someone. If you successfully attack them, it does 2 points of damage. But if you roll and get a great or greater, you can choose to up that by 1, right? So that your sword now hits so good it hurt them for 3 damage. You can inflict a status effect. Different kinds of weapons, different kinds of attacks will have different status effects applied to them. If you attack someone using fire, and you roll high enough to choose inflict a status effect, you'll hurt them, but also they will be on fire. If your weapon is a sword, this is me talking out my ass right now. Hammers, for example, will have a stun status effect, where you hit them so hard you shake them for a turn. Swords will have, each different type of weapon will have its own effect attached to it. So depending on what you use to attack and how high you roll, you can either hurt them more, give them a status effect. Susie says, I want an insect-themed sword that's bigger than me. Absolutely. Go for it. Why not? You may have to, like, get the materials to craft it first. You'll start out with a regular sword and then upgrade to a big, like, Cloud Strife motherfucker. Inflict a Zweihander. Yeah, something like that. So do additional harm, inflict a status effect. What's a third thing that hitting someone really, really good can do? I don't want it to be you attack twice. I don't want that to happen. Because again, you could choose do additional harm, attack twice, and your 2 damage sword now does 3 damage for the attack, and you swipe it 2 times, that's 6 damage. Knock some sense into them. Oh, okay, hold on. That's not, that's not bad. It's the whole I know you're in there kind of thing. Or like when 2 anime foes, like the Muda, Ara, where they're standing like real close to each other, just going at it, but they're like locked. They're like not necessarily grappled, but they're clashing. And there's a chance for you to say something really like heroic or dramatic, makes them go, oh, like an anime, like I hadn't thought of that, and it makes them like break away and like think for a second, like, But then that's also kind of how a status effect would work, where you apply it to them and it makes them like back off or like waste a turn trying to remove it. Hit them hard enough and they get some extra perception. I feel like that's actually probably better for parrying. Because the idea is that action variant moves, you can do at the drop of a hat. You could do nothing the entire game, but say, I attack it, I attack it, I attack it. And you roll each time, and if you're consistently able to choose the, I knock some sense into them by hitting them hard enough, there's going to be someone who does that. Reaction variants, on the other hand, are triggered by what the DM puts in front of you. You can't choose to parry unless something is already attacking you. Does that make sense? Statistically speaking, you are going to be making more action variant rolls than you are reaction variant rolls. So I would probably want to move the hit them hard enough and they get some extra perception. Here. Hit them hard enough and they get some extra perception. I'll reword this. But yeah, I feel like that's probably better for parrying. Someone attacks you. You bring your sword up and you meet their blade, and you say something really dramatic like, Morgana would never have wanted this! And of course, because the person attacking you love Morgana, it's like, I can't believe you used her name! And then you like deflect his sword, and then you go right back to attacking, and then go on from there. Can I give my sword looting 3? Please do. I truly do not know what I'm talking about. No! Honestly, people who don't know what they're talking about are some of the best people to talk to. You know Carol? I haven't talked to Carol in like 6 months. I hope she's alive, but, you know, that's neither here nor there. Carol came and visited me last summer. Not like 2020 summer. She came 2019 summer. I think it was 2019. And while she was here, I intended, we never got around to it, I wanted to run a D&D 5th edition one-shot for Carol. And Carol was really into it. She was like, yes, 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 teach me how to play D&D. So I gave her the books, and I gave her the rundown, saying, here's how you make a character. Here's what you need to know. A moment of silence for Carol. I really hope she's not dead, but it's 2020, so who knows? We really do. We if you're listening, Carol, we miss you. But yeah, she'd never played D&D before. She didn't know anything about D&D. And so I said, here's a list of all the fantasy races you can choose to be, right? And she's flipping through the book, and she saw tieflings. Let me show you what a D&D 5th edition tiefling is, all right? Let me just show you this real quick. Yeah, here's the official picture. Can I zoom in on this? Can I open image in a new tab? Yeah. So this is what a D&D 5th edition tiefling looks like, right? They are a hellish race. They have demon blood in their body. At some point during their ancestry, a demon got involved, right? And as a result, they have horns. They tend to have access to fire magics, and they have long tails and like purplish reddish skin. And a lot of people don't like them because they have such close ties to hell. They're the ones the gays always choose. It's just how it is, okay? So Carol saw a tiefling, and not knowing anything about a tiefling said, I think they're slimy. And I said, I'm sorry? She goes, yeah. I think that their resistance to fire damage comes from the fact that they are slimy, and so they have extra protection from the heat. And this is not true in canon D&D. But this person who had never played this game before saw that image, said, you know what? I'm going to declare that this is true, and completely altered the experience. Suddenly, instead of choosing the generic backstories that everyone gives their tieflings about how, you know, their grandparents or whatever made a deal with the devil and now they suffer and all that jazz. No, Carol's like, yeah, no, he's just slimy. And for whatever, this doesn't sound as amazing now that I'm saying it out loud here, but it blew my mind. The people who don't know what's what, anyone who really, really knew what the backstory was for tieflings, what their importance is in D&D lore, they never would have said, also mine is slimy. Like, that's only, like, from the mouth of babes, you know? And it just blew me away. So, like, even though you don't really know what's going on, bless you, I do still appreciate your input. I really, really do. I started ranting again. I lost track of where I was. Whoopsie. Can I see... Streamlabs keeps switching back and forth from telling me that I have, like, 10 people in chat to saying I only have 2 viewers, and I don't know which one's correct, but hopefully it's the other one. Hello, everyone. Yes, we need one more option for the attack variant, action variant attack, and one more for the reaction variant parry. So parry, you redirect an incoming attack. You knock it away. You hit them hard enough that they get some extra perception. Okay, so hold on. So parry, right? You meet an incoming attack. All right? The very basic success is you successfully parry, which means you don't take damage from the attack. As a bonus, you can redirect that attack back at someone else. Okay? So if they're firing a laser at you, you pull up your sword and you hit the blast and it goes ricocheting back and it hits them instead. Okay? Or you can hit them hard enough that they get some extra perception. When you parry it, the clash is so strong that it knocks them back and they realize, oh shit, I'm dealing with a badass over here. Ooh. The last one should be something in the same vein, where you have successfully parried the attack, so you're not damaged. Maybe this one can be get an extra attack with no bonuses? Deal damage. Make an attack move negating bonuses and I guess we'll call them roll options. So the same thing as the perception, right? If you do this very specific thing, you can make another action without applying bonuses or selecting options for greater grand rolls. So the same thing. The difference is here is that unlike perception, where you can make any move that counts as acting on the new information, this is specifically another attack. So you have to negate the bonuses and roll options. You can only do one kind of move, but the trade-off is that you can choose to have it happen. So in a round of combat, players go first. Your character rushes up and slices with their sword, and they hit the bad guy. The bad guy staggers back, but pulls up his gun and fires. You see the shot coming, and you parry, and you can, you knock it away. You can either send that attack back at them, at which point you would be doing however much damage that attack is, which you may not know how much damage that attack is, or knowing that your sword is a 2 damage, you know for a fact that your sword is more powerful than their attack, maybe. You can parry it, which you get with a regular success, and then choose to, instead of redirecting it back at them, you can make an attack move and do a flat 2 damage on them. But if you get a grand roll for your parry, you can both redirect the attack and then attack them again. Yeah, I like that. I like that. It allows you to play a character who's more fluid in combat, or in the case of you playing a character who wants to stop the combat, you could choose to redirect it at a target that isn't the guy that fired at you. You could use it to like hit a wall or blast open a door, and then choose hit them hard enough with perception to yell at them saying, "We're not your enemy," and maybe change the tide of battle that way. Get them all to lay down their arms. I like that. I like that a lot. I wrote it, so I probably should, but I like that a lot. All right, last thing we're going to do, and then at the 3-hour mark, we're going to bed. One more option for the attack, the action variant of attack, attempt to cause harm to a foe. You can do additional harm. You can inflict a status effect. What if we can... Should we choose gain an advantageous position again? At this point, we have it on like 2 different things. Your eyes beg for sleep. Go to sleep, Susie. Thank you for hanging out with me. I appreciate it. Good night. Let's, instead of gaining an advantageous position for yourself, put an opponent in a disadvantageous position. That's not how that word is spelt. So you could say, I attack, I do harm, but I also knock their weapon out of their hands with my attack, which means a little longer, just a little longer. You can make it. You can make it. Yeah, I like that, because so status effects are long term, whereas and they're mechanical. There's going to be a rule that states when you poison an enemy, this happens. Whereas putting an opponent in a disadvantageous position is not going to be set in stone what that means. You could trip them. You could knock something out of their hands. It wouldn't be big enough that would change the math on what happens when they attack you. But it might, maybe instead of hitting you with a sword, if you knock the sword out of their hands, they'll try and punch you instead. You know? Something like that. Something like that. Okay. And that's going to do it for us tonight. Can I switch over here? Spooky is still here. Hey, thank you guys who hung out for as long as you did for staying. Hopefully you found this entertaining. I didn't make anywhere near the normal numbers that I do, so obviously not everyone was into it, but hopefully you enjoyed yourself. For those of you who are my subscribers or donators at the $5 level or higher, you have access to this document at all times. This is the document that I work from when I work on this game at all, and you can read up on what I've added, skim through it at your leisure, leave comments if you have things you want to add. I'm absolutely in the mood for people like looking over my stuff and, putting their 2 cents in. Even if they don't think it's anything that would help me, I still want to hear it because you never know. A fresh set of eyes on something is great. Next week's schedule, I mean, no one's probably here except for Susie. They probably already know. Next week's schedule is going to be a little iffy. On Friday, we are going to be doing coop cakes. We are going to be making a pumpkin bundt cake for a Halloween party. My wife is going to, with just her and her siblings, so it's not really a party, but whatever. And then on Saturday, I'm actually going to be running a one-shot of the game What's So Cool About Wizarding School with a couple of my friends. We're going to be playing that on Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Hopefully you can come and watch us. We're going to do some magical Halloween-y stuff, and it's going to be great. Until then, guys, thank you very much for watching. I will see you later. Have a wonderful night, and bye-bye! And we can stream now.